And welcome to this special edition of Hannity. Now, a few months ago, we invited an entire audience made up of distinguished African-American conservatives to talk about some of the most important and controversial issues regarding race in our society. Now, especially since we have seen time and time again, if you're African-American and you're conservative, you're vilified, you're demonized. Now, tonight, due to the overwhelming response that we received about the program, we decided it was important to do a second show. So for the next hour, I'll be joined once again by another group of renowned African-American conservatives. And before I turn to the floor and then turn it over to them, there are a few statistics that I believe are important to highlight. Now, first, Democrats like to perpetuate the lie that they are the party of minorities. And to their point, in the last election, the presidential election, according to our Fox News exit polls, 93% of African-Americans voted for Barack Obama. Only 6% voted for Governor Mitt Romney. But my question is, why? Let's take a look at some of the statistics. Now, back when Barack Obama became president in January 2009, the unemployment rate among African Americans was a startling 12.7%. But guess what? Fast forward 4 years, that number is even worse. The current unemployment rate of this group is now 13.5%. Now, unfortunately, those aren't the only startling statistics when it comes to those, for example, who need food stamp assistance. In 2009, over 7 million African Americans participated in the program. Now, according to the most recent information that we have, this number has now risen over 10 million. And that's not all. In 2009, over 9 million African Americans were listed as living in poverty. This shouldn't come as a shock. Today, that number is worse. According to the latest data, over 10 million are now listed in that category. So my question is this. Clearly, President Obama's policies are not working or helping African Americans. So why wouldn't they want to see what at least conservatives have to offer? And joining me now to help answer this question, a distinguished group of African American conservatives. Give yourselves a big hand. Welcome. Thank you. All right, last time I got in trouble for saying African American. You were just yelling. Why is that the wrong term? You all agree that's what? Let me survey. Is that the wrong term?
Yes.
Hands up, wrong term.
Sean.
How many right turn? I see right turn.
I don't think it matters much dealing with African American versus black. I had a conversation with James Earl Jones, and he said it took him a while to get from color to Negro. The bottom line is this: poverty knows no color. And the fact of the matter is, liberals utilize an agenda that actually exploits us.
Well,
and I think that's most important.
I understand intellectually that's the right argument. Language, however, matters. And when you hyphenate yourselves as Americans, but you don't focus on the fact that we're people, we're human, you're American, the left uses the hyphenation to separate you. And if nothing else, fight back at the language itself and take it for what it really is, intellectually, to your point.
Carol?
What bothers me about it is that Jesse Jackson is the one that announced that we would henceforth be African Americans. He moved us from black, and so that's why I rejected it.
Okay, fair. You're agreeing with that?
Sean, I look forward to the time and day when, whether it's black American or African American, we completely get away from hyphenated Americans. If we are going to be, we're Americans, period. If we're going to make the transition the way we need to and see America, in my opinion, come to this revolution of our constitutional foundings and come back together as a country moving forward, we have to start seeing ourselves as Americans. You don't go to French and see black French or Italian and see brown Italians. We are Americans, not African American, not black American.
It's really self-segregation when we hear this term. You know, when you hear African American, oh wait, we're Africans, but or Americans, but a certain kind. We're Americans like everyone else, and I really reject Jesse Jackson's self-segregation paradigm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Using the left's tactics, and we should reject that every opportunity. The left puts people in boxes. The left says we're on women, we're on the black man.
Politics?
It's identity politics, and I refuse to be placed in their box. I've never been in their box. I've never been to Africa. I'm black. It's okay. If you want to be African American, or anyone wants to be African American, I'm fine with that too, but I refuse to allow someone who is a charlatan like Jesse Jackson to define who I am.
Sean, there's an important point here about the culture, and it's America, not just blacks. Anyone can become an American by coming to this country, going through the process, come from any country in the world. It's unique about this country. You can keep your Italian, your Irish, your every heritage wherever you come from.
You're making fun of my Irish family.
Yes, I am, because I have Irish in my family too, so I can do that. But my point is, you can become an American anyone, anywhere in the world, from any country, can become an American. Why do we self-segregate, to use DeRoy's word? Let's focus on what really matters.
God did not make us colorblind, okay? God gave us the ability to see in color. I look at white, I look at black, I look at Hispanic, I don't care. That is the point we need to get to. It's not so much as I am a black American. I don't care to say that. I'm black and I'm proud. I was raised in the house with James Brown. So over and over again, that has been beat into my head, and I am not ashamed of it. I don't care. And that has to be the message we take.
I want you to know,
caring.
I lost all control of the show. This was not the topic, but this is important, isn't
it? But here's the rub, though. Yeah. We have spent the last couple of minutes talking about color. When we have a high unemployment rate, when we have more black men in prison today, when the fact we get a college education, but can we find a job? But yet, when Sean read those statistics, the majority of us still voted for a president that does not represent our conservative.
All right, wait a minute. Wait, I got a question. Why?
Why? Because right now, we as Republicans have not put forth an urban agenda to counter what the Democrats and President Obama has said. Not one time when we look at high unemployment, when the president introduced his nominee for Secretary of Labor, he talked about disability, he talked about the LGBT community. Not one time in that 5-minute speech of Mr. Perez did he talk about anything about the African American or black community and our unemployment.
Mm-hmm. Yes, back there and then Star. Yeah.
Well, I say this. With the color thing, my mom is 86 years old. Mm-hmm. Somebody walked up to her and said, "Sister, do you know where you're from?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm from Long Island, New York." And no, do you know what country you're from? "Yeah, I'm from the United States of America." So, I mean, that's the way that they're trying to shove it down their side. But if we can say, hey, guess what? You know what? We're Americans. I mean, I served in the military. We weren't black and white in the military. Well, we weren't black and white in the military. We were the United States military. We died. We protected each other. We watched each other's back. Whether we were black or white, yellow, gray, we watch each other back. That's what we have to do.
Isn't there also a spiritual component to this?
There's a lot. There's a lot.
I'm a Christian, and I believe God created every human being with talent and ability. And unfortunately, the way society is now, a lot of our kids, all races, are falling behind. And these statistics ought to scare everybody, because the unemployment rate for black teenagers in this country right now is 50%. Those kids are now going to be on the street. They're not going to be out working and developing the skills they need to get ahead later in life.
To the point that was made about having a rapid response when they play race, the president just made a declaration that we should do away with Christian and or Catholic education because these are divisive. And yet, one of the primary reasons that we have such high unemployment rate in the black community is because these young people are not getting a quality education.
None of us chose our birth. But what we should be able to choose, regardless of color, and we recognize it, we see it for what it is, we should be able to choose our future, and we have opportunity in this country, and that's what is the promise of America. And you don't choose your birth, but you choose your future, and you should have the right to pursue it.
All right, I have a question, show of hands. How many in this audience think that the president's agenda, he got 93% of the black vote in the last election, how many of you think his policies have hurt black America?
All of America.
Anybody? All of Americans. All of Americans. But specifically, we're dealing with. Okay, we're going to take a break. We'll come back to that point when we get back. And coming up next on the special edition of Hannity.
Join with me today in abandoning the government plantation and the party of disappointment, so that we may all echo the words of one Republican leader who famously said, "Free at last, free at last."
Now, that was a Louisiana state senator who recently decided to leave the Democratic Party and join the GOP. Coming up next, we'll discuss his bold decision, and even some members of our studio audience say that they've made the same switch, and they're going to explain their reasoning coming up on the special edition of Hannity. Welcome back to our special edition of Hannity, where we have Black Conservatives, Part 2. Recently, Louisiana State Senator Elbert Guillory decided to leave the Democratic Party and join the GOP. He released a video explaining his decision. Watch.
I wanted to take a moment to explain why I chose to become a Republican, and also to explain why I don't think it was a bold decision at all. It is the right decision, not only for me, but for all my brothers and sisters in the black community. You see, in recent history, the Democrat Party has created the illusion that their agenda and their policies are what's best for black people. You see, at the heart of liberalism is the idea that only a great and powerful big government can be the benefactor of social justice for all Americans. But the left is only concerned with one thing: control. And they disguise this control as charity. The idea that blacks, or anyone for that matter, need the government to get ahead in life is despicable.
Now, Guillory is not the only black American who feels that way. Some members of our audience were also at one time members of the Democratic Party, and thankfully they eventually saw the light. All right, T.W. Shannon, you are the Speaker of the House in Oklahoma.
I am, Sean.
Okay, were you ever Democrat?
I was for about 2 years when I first registered. But you know, the interesting part is I didn't learn my conservative values from any elected official. I learned them from my predominantly African-American church in Lawton, Oklahoma, Bethlehem Baptist Church. And the bottom line is this: we cannot continue to wait for the federal government to lead, whether it's in the areas of education, health care. The National Party has shown that they're either unwilling or incapable to make the necessary changes that are going to move this country forward. If there's going to be change, it's going to happen in the halls of state governments.
Why, if Obama's in his 5th year and it's not helping the whole country, specifically black Americans, why does he get 93% of the vote?
Well, I think it's the symbolism of what he represented. I think that we in America, we're attracted to icons, and I think that his election initially represented, you know, a moment in history where we all knew there had been some progress, but the fact that there was an African-American president elected was a good thing. That's certainly not a bad thing at all. I think many people felt a sense of pride about that. But the bottom line is the policies are what are going to make the difference and make the legacy, and those policies have not been in the favor of not only African-Americans, Native Americans, or America as a whole.
Not just the policy, but not just policy, but making the case, you know, making the argument. I was talking to my friend Sonny Johnson back there earlier about how it's time for us, especially as black conservatives, to move beyond the race discussion and start talking about how we persuade people. And honestly, when I have had an open, passionate discussion about why I am a conservative, former liberal, now conservative, and I've explained, you know, why, it's because I care for my people, it's because I care for my community, it's because everything we've been doing for the last 50 years has made things worse for us, not better, and I want us to try something different. President, you start winning people, so we need to
let me go to the judge. I promise we'll get everybody. Judge, you are a Superior Court judge in North Carolina.
Yes.
Okay, and a role model and a success story for everybody. Are these kids going to be left behind if they're not working in the summertime?
Absolutely. And I have been a member of the Republican Party for 10 years now, proud member. Had a road to Damascus conversion where I fell off the donkey and saw the light. And I have had the opportunity to speak with friends and family members about the conversion, and the conversation starts around the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and one person at a time discussing what our values were growing up in our households and in our churches.
All right, let me go to Katrina. You're with you're back with us with the Dallas, and she's got her cowgirl boots on with the Dallas Tea Party.
Yeah, I want to just address something that Kira said, because I think she's right. I mean, we need to take some responsibility and get out there and actually deliver the message. Unfortunately, I think that when people do meet us and realize that we're not just mean, crazy, right-wing extremists, and they like you, they just make an exception for you. So what really needs to happen, exactly.
A right-wing nut job, usually.
Right-wing nut job, extremists, all the above. But what really needs to happen, those of the top of the Republican Party, they're the ones that are going to have to make that message clear. They're going to have to go to the neighborhoods and show these kids who they are, so that they're not the mean monster in the back of the closet.
There's no
reference point.
Very badly. Show of hands. Republicans have failed to reach out to the black community.
You know, Sean.
Even more so than that. Okay. Sean, even more so than that. This.
One at a time.
Please, this, and I'll leave this alone.
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of taking responsibility.
Yeah.
I've always been that way. I'm not going to throw any stones, not directly at the Republican Party. I'm going to start with myself. myself and the conservatives in this room, which makes me so proud to be here, is if we're going to use some biblical examples, we're like the Joshua and Caleb that went to go see the promised land. Now we're trying to come back and tell everyone, listen, it's okay. We can inhabit the giants. We can take the land. But we have to be patient. I'm not finished. We have to be patient. I'm going to get this out. We have to be patient with those that cannot see the light, that aren't there yet. And as the judge said, go back to our communities. I don't want the Republican Party to go to my family. I can go myself. And if we do that, we'll convert way more people. We have to realize the power that's in our hands.
All right, hang on. Wait, let me get a mic on you.
I switched parties in 1993 from Democrat to Republican. I had such an epiphany. I wrote this book, Bamboozled, How Americans Are Being Exploited by the Lies of the Liberal Agenda. This book is still selling, and each chapter in that book is based on a chapter in the Bible. I went to Memphis, Tennessee, to the Church of World Overcomers, predominantly black church, and gave a sermon about why we have left who we are as black conservatives. When you go to the house of God and you talk about, like chapter 1, Uncle Sam isn't your baby's daddy, therefore you need to get married before you have a child and not depend on the government, people will listen.
Sean, there's a problem. There's a problem I see here.
We got a break. I promise.
All right, we got to come back because there's a problem with trying to switch labels rather than talking principles, values, and what works. We hear about switching a Republican. I want to tell people that you should first recognize you have a choice. You should at least know why you made that choice, have a reason and a basis for that choice. If you want to be a liberal, be liberal, but know why you're a conservative.
But Republicans need to go into people's communities, shake and look people in the eye, shake their hand, and ask for their vote.
But before you
ask for the vote. All right, hang on. We got to take a break. Now, coming up, we're going to have more with our studio audience. By the way, everybody's really shy. Coming up right after the break. And up next, we'll talk about how the mainstream media tries to perpetuate the lie that Republicans and conservatives, they don't like or care about minorities. We'll deal with that as Hannity continues. And welcome back to our Black Conservative Special, Part 2. And members of the mainstream media have been in the pocket of the Obama administration since the day he set foot in the Oval Office, even earlier. And one lie the so-called journalists have been repeating, they try to push this over the years, is that when conservatives criticize the Obama White House, they say that the president's race is a factor. Here's a recent example from the left-wing NBC host Martin Bashir talking about the IRS enemies list. Watch this.
The IRS is being used in exactly the same way as they tried to use the president's birth certificate. You see, for Republicans like Darrell Issa, who knows something about arson, the IRS now stands for something inflammatory. Those three letters are now on fire with political corruption and malfeasance, burning hot, just like that suspicious fire that engulfed Mr. Issa's warehouse back in 1982. And despite the complete lack of any evidence linking the president to the targeting of Tea Party groups, Republicans are using it as their latest weapon in the war against the black man in the White House.
All right, we continue. You don't like this. All right, DeRoy Murdoch.
Yeah, that's an amazing comment. You know, the IRS a few weeks ago actually apologized for this targeting of the Tea Party and conservatives. So was the IRS, in fact, somehow trying to embarrass Obama when they apologized for this behavior? This is obviously totally delusional, and you see this time and time again. People on the left, anytime people on the right criticize Obama, it's for racist reasons and not because there's a problem with his policy. We disagree with what he's trying to do.
I just had a reporter do this to me, like 4 different ways. He said, you don't like the president because he's black. And I said, no, I don't like him because he's a socialist.
That's it. Yeah.
Pretty easy. Karen. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I am a member of the Westchester Tea Party, and one of the founding principles of the Tea Party is the Constitution.
I called you Karen, I meant Leslie.
That's okay. One of the founding principles of the Tea Party is, relying on the Constitution, and I think that there tends to be a misconception about the Constitution. When we say we want to go back to the Constitution, people think racist, they think slavery, but that's not it. The Constitution explicitly says that we are all created equal, and so talking about going into schools and talking to young children, I think if we show them the Constitution and what it actually means and explain it to them, maybe that would draw them to it more and to realize that it's there to help us and to protect us, but not to give us things.
I know our founding fathers, we can deal with the whole issue of our constitutional convention. It was I don't think the country would have been formed if they tried to deal with the evil of slavery at the time. They tried.
Right.
But one thing to their credit and in their wisdom, they put in place a system where we can right wrongs and correct injustices. And history has proven the country fought a civil war. We had a civil rights movement, the '64 Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act. Carol, yeah.
I'd like to say that for me, I had been a Democrat most of my life, and I made the switch maybe about 10 years ago. It was not easy to become a Republican. I went Democrat, Independent, and eventually Republican. And I don't see how anyone that call themselves a Christian could actually belong to the Democratic Party.
Why do you say that?
Because it's the party of abortion. And if you look at the impact on African Americans, if Republicans were doing to blacks what Democrats are doing, it would be called genocide.
Wow. Ron Christie.
Well, you know, the thing about what we started at the top of the segment, Sean, that upsets me the most is that the White House and his enablers in the media use race as a means to stop conversation. If you say that someone's a racist or they play the race card, it instantly kills the conversation. This president's policies have failed Americans in general, and they have failed the black community in particular. What they're doing for the lack of school choice is killing our kids. What they're doing with gun violence in our inner cities, it's killing black kids. But does the media want to discuss this? No, because it takes away from the narrative that Obama, the Democrats, doing all these great things, and Republicans are racist, and they don't really get it.
Deneen Borelli, go
ahead. Just to piggyback on that point, the left uses race as a very emotional issue. And the video you just showed with Martin Bashir on empower.org, we have an action alert for black conservatives to take action, send a note to him, make him apologize for what he did. And another thing I want to mention is that when we have black conservatives that come out to promote liberty and personal responsibility, we need a support system, because there are way too many people who are afraid to come out and say something because of targeting from their family, their friends, people who are close to them. And so we have a great room of leaders here. There are many, many more black conservatives out there, and we need to do more of these programs, but also to develop a support system so that there are more people can come out for liberty and talk about the implorable educational numbers and the ridiculous crime rates and all of that.
Carl.
I think there are three things we need to do. We have to show up in communities like Rand Paul did when he went to Howard University. So we have to go to communities that normally that wouldn't be receptive to our message. And then second, we have to communicate what we stand for. Why is it a benefit? Not just for that community, but for the whole country. And then we have to justify our brand, the real brand, not the perceived brand. So we need to use examples like our GOP governors. These governors, Rick Perry, and we have some other great governors in the red states. If you live in those states, you have a greater chance of upward mobility because of conservative policies. So we need to make that connection, because there are people moving to these red states and they don't realize that they're moving towards the benefits of limited government, economic freedom, and then they vote like they did in the blue states they moved from. So we need to incorporate those three plans: show up, communicate, and justify.
Sean, I just need to make a point since you brought up Rick Perry. I just want you to know.
Because she's in Texas. Hang on, let me get a mic on you. Hi, unless you want to borrow mine.
I'll take yours.
Okay.
No, since you brought up Governor Rick Perry, I just wanted to point out we spent 6 months fighting for school choice in Texas, and it failed. So just want to make that point.
All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to get everybody in. I know we've got a lot more to cover. We still have half the show. And coming up, we're just getting started. We're going to have more with our special studio audience of black conservatives as Hannity continues. By the way, thank you for being with us. And welcome back to our special edition of Hannity. It is an audience edition composed of black conservatives. You are with Timothy, the Frederick Douglass Foundation. Okay. We were talking a little bit in the break. You have a complaint about the Congressional Black Caucus.
Yeah, I mean, as we've been talking about, you know, a variety of different topics, my big concern is that we're not holding the Congressional Black Caucus accountable. They have been skating by for years as it relates down to their so-called representation of the black community, and it's time for them to leave office. As a matter of fact, as far as I'm concerned, we need to demolish the CBC in and of itself. If we're talking about all Americans, as my brother Charles said, then we need to make sure they're all American. They get paid $175,000 a year, like every other congressional person, and they need to work on behalf of all their constituents, not so-called just the blacks. And we look at what just took place over the past 6 months of just some of the nonsense that some of them have done and some of the ethics issues that they've had to deal with. We need to recognize that they do a disservice to us. and they're not doing anything. And we look at Detroit, we look at Cleveland, we look at North Carolina, we can go all over the country,
Look
and
at
those
Detroit.
communities are not doing well.
Look at Detroit. They are bulldozing neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely. And yet,
It's sad.
and yet they get. That's right.
In the grass
It's horrible. Yeah, it's horrible. All right, Meek, go ahead. I'm going to go up. I promise you're going to weigh in.
One of the things I wanted to address early on, because you asked the question, you said why 93% of the black vote still going to President Obama, and I didn't hear anyone address that. And I really think that when you speak spiritually of the issues that affect the black community, you really have to talk about idolatry, and that is exalting something above God, right? And so I think that when you look at what happened in the second term, not the first term, because I think that everybody got caught up in this, oh my goodness, first black president type thing. But I think when you look at the second term, it really was idolatry, because the sheep clothes were off. And everybody knew what they were getting, but they still voted for him because they exalted the color of their skin over the word of God. And if we don't address that in the black community and say that, my friend, is idolatry, then we have trouble.
You mean like people that get a thrill up their leg?
Yes, exactly. Exactly right.
That's what you're talking about.
That's
Will,
the first
go ahead.
step to idolatry.
Yeah.
Just bouncing off that,
yeah.
I feel like that's the X factor for the black community. It's the church. It's the church. Yes. If you look at the conservative, principles, we have social, we have the government, we have, you got to get back to the church. The church is the one that fought for freedom, for free rights, for civil rights. It's the church that was the one pioneering this stuff. And so I feel like it goes back to us being being Christians, and black people, whether they heard it from their grandmother, from their mom, great-grand, they know something about church. They know something about God.
Harold, I lived in Atlanta. I knew Maynard Jackson. I knew Andrew Young. I was best friends with Hosea Williams. I mean, I knew John Lewis. I mean, the bravery that these men showed during the civil rights movement, unprecedented, but they're all liberal Democrats. Louis Farrakhan has a church. He even has part of his message about responsibility is good.
Right. Well, one of the things that we're doing in Baton Rouge, we have a mentor-protege program. It's called a Conservative Mentor-Protege Program, Louisiana Business and Community Alliance. We're focused on entrepreneurship. These kids are not, we put ownership mentality versus consumer mentality. When we go out there and ask them what they want to be when they grow up, actually that's what everybody asks them. What we ask them is what kind of business they want to own when they grow up. So now that's putting them, they can't fathom the fact that they can be a pipe fitter. When you go and ask them what they want to be when they grow up, they say pipe fitter. We ask them what kind of business they want to own. We ask them to tell them you want to be a refinery owner. So they can't fathom the fact that they can own a business.
As long as they say they don't want to be a TV or radio talk show. I don't need any more competition.
Right. But we're trying to pick that ownership mentality versus a consumer mentality and show those kids in that community that the only way they're going to be able to get out of poverty is owning their own business.
Then they'll own their, it's a good point. Right. Then they'll own their own house and business and car. Yes, in the corner.
I'm Charles Butler.
Hi, Charles.
And, hi. I listen to everyone talk here, and I really appreciate your point of views. Yeah, I've been a Republican since '72 at University of Michigan, but the issue here is that we haven't focused on is illegal immigration and immigration reform. We have people who are talking about legalizing 12 million people and bringing in another 33 million guest workers who are going to impact people who are at the lower socioeconomic at entry-level jobs in this country.
They just said that this week in that report that came out.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And the CBO has already said that it's going to be a very detrimental impact on Black Americans. I just read the report the other day. I'm telling you, those are the issues we need to focus on. Once they pass the law, then we want to come and fight this thing. We need to deal with it now, and we're doing that through the Black Alliance.
Yeah, Jennifer, we haven't gotten you in. Hi.
Thank you so much, Sean. I wanted to address two things. Number one, I'm the social media director for the TeaParty.net, and just talking about the left using race as a basis of everything, I manage our Facebook page. The majority, 75% of the posts that go up are from me. Yet we still get, put a picture up about Obama and say something about his policies, and we're racist. I've shared videos of me speaking at Tea Party rallies. I've shared articles that I've written, and people still accuse me of not existing because I can't question Obama. And I think one thing that we really thank you so much. One thing that we really need to keep in mind when you think about both hyphenation, and it's not just the loss of the Black community, but also of the youth, it's the fact that we've let the left take control of the school system. I was a teacher for 12 years, and I remember teachers from well-to-do areas talking about the kids who had a mother who was a drug addict and a father in prison. And they let these kids slide by and gave them all these special privileges. And I would tell them, look, you're not doing that child any favors. They need structure in their life beyond anything because of what they're going through at home.
Know what they need? They need a mom and a dad.
Yes.
And, you know, maybe they don't need what my father did, the belt, but they need discipline.
They need discipline.
The
And they
hardcore.
longed for just, I was the
Because you love
toughest
them.
teacher in the school.
Yeah.
And they wanted to be in my class because they knew I would hold them accountable, but they also knew that there was times to have fun, and but they worked hard because I expected it. And they'll live up to expectations.
All right, we got to take a break. Good, that's a great point. I wish I had you as a teacher.
Thanks.
All my teachers were liberal.
I didn't know what I was at the
We got to take a break. We're going to come back more with our studio audience straight ahead as Hannity continues. And welcome back to the special edition of Hannity, as we are joined by a studio audience of black conservatives. Jason Riley, last but not least, almost everybody else has spoken.
Well, I wanted to pick up on something about why the enthusiasm among blacks for Obama is what it is. And I think part of it is symbolism, but I also think the media plays something of a role in making blacks almost feel guilty if they don't enthusiastically support the president. I see the media as generally an extension of the left. And the left really has no use for blacks who don't want to blame the problems on other people. If you're a black person who wants to use racism or the legacy of slavery as an all-purpose explanation for everything wrong in the black community, they will embrace you with open arms on the left. But if you say that incarceration rates and education skills and so forth and illegitimacy rates need to be solved by blacks themselves, the left has no use for you. In fact, they see you more as a threat. And I think this feeds in to what we see playing out in the media.
Time. It's acceptable in the media
Sure.
to excoriate and use the worst ad hominem, personal, nasty, vicious attacks if
They
you're
start
black and conservative.
psychoanalyzing you. There must be something wrong with you.
Yeah, you're right. Niall, hi.
I just wanted to address the fact of blind loyalty. So many times in people that I speak with, they just automatically vote Democrat. When I say, well, what do you think about this politician or this politician? Well, I don't care about that. I'm going to vote Democrat. Well, why? Well, my mom voted Democrat, or my aunt voted Democrat, or my grandmother voted Democrat, so we are just Democrats. And what I think is important is to be able to know and understand both sides and then make an educated decision, not just a blind loyalty, because when you just blindly follow, oftentimes you fall into a ditch and then you don't know why you're there, so you don't know how to get out.
That's well said. I know you wanted to jump in. Go ahead.
Now, I'm with you, okay?
Yes.
I am more conservative than I am GOP. And that is the reason, because I was brought up in the Tea Party. Now, what I think the difference between the Tea Party and GOP is people orientated, rather politics orientated. I am a people person. So using my youth, the people that I hang with, my generation, the disconnect is when you say the Constitution is good, we want to go back to our founding principles, we want to do all these they don't know what the principles are. So you say you want to explain it, they don't want to hear what the principles are. How do you get them? You get them what they say. Give them a wallet. Buy him a wallet and tell him, here's your charge. Never ever let a police officer take this wallet from you, and never ever let it go empty. That is how you do it. You go and you give them capitalism. You give them something to fight for. But you cannot go in and say, well, this policy is good. You should now change your mind. Because they ask, where are the blacks in the Tea Party? I'm like, where are the blacks showing up at Occupy Wall Street? Where are the blacks in the rest of the places? They're not there.
Okay, David. Yeah.
And this is why I love Sonny, because she and I have done this over and over again on my show. She does it publicly. I'm one of the original Tea Party founders. When Breitbart was excoriated over Shirley Sherrod, we went out there. All of us formed the National Tea Party Federation, and we never talked about color. We talked about education. We talked about the things Sonny talks about. Giving you skin in the game is giving you knowledge. Knowledge is power. Why is it that 57 years, about 20,997 days, is to be a laudable achievement for John Dingell in Detroit, where the inner city has fallen apart, where they've lost over 25% of their population, where they've spent over a decade at the #1 spot on the poverty rate list. We are not teaching Americans, black or otherwise, what their skin in the game is, what the value proposition is in life. The value proposition is choice, it's opportunity, it's reward, it's possibly failure. And we've got to impart this to our kids. But Sean, final point. Stop trying to switch labels. And to the blacks out there and to Americans out there, consider that the Tea Party model of individualism, of a limited, effective, and efficient government is a better opportunity for all Americans.
But you cannot ignore public policy, because public policy shapes public behavior. All of us agree that the welfare policies are what bankrupt our community. When you look in the 60s, 70% of our children were raised in marital households. Today it's 70% raised in single household. This is direct public policy. So when you look at issues like immigration and what they're talking about in reform, public policy has David Bacon on the books. Public policy has minimum wage laws on the books. That's just why this will collapse our community. Blacks have to work at minimum wage level.
We got to take a break. Hang on.
Latinos don't.
We have a final.
But another place that it impacts.
You're a great audience. Hang on. We are going to take a break. When we come back,
we're not talking about the
final thoughts and advice for young people and how they can get ahead regardless of race. Straight ahead. And welcome back to the special edition of Hannity. Advice for not only African American kids, black kids, white kids, Hispanic kids. Judge, advice for kids.
Get your education. It's the key to knowledge.
And parents force them. Advice.
Absolutely. My advice would simply be learn both sides. If you need to learn how to argue both sides for yourself.
I hate arguing the liberal side.
I'd say the same thing, and I think school choice is vital to this. One of the very first things President Obama did when he came in was shut down the D.C. voucher program. That was a shameful thing. We need school choice all around the country, starting with D.C. and elsewhere.
Good advice. Yeah, you're a state legislator.
It's
advice.
About prosperity, Sean. Conservative principles lead to prosperity. Reject the notion that you have to have a special standard in order to compete. We did it in Oklahoma, and we're showing that it works.
Star, you had a tough life growing up and went through a lot, and you pulled yourself up and out.
The Lord saved me personally, and then I opened a business. When you open a business, you want to keep what you've worked for. Yeah, we should open businesses.
Good point. Yeah, friend.
Best piece of advice I ever got, and can go for anybody of any stripe, always be where you're supposed to be.
I like that. Stay and get home before midnight. Nothing good happens after midnight. Yeah.
Like I said earlier, I think show up. Everyone wants, black conservatives to show up and other leaders to show up. We need people in the community to show up too and be willing to listen to what we have to say. Keep an open mind.
Carol?
I think it's essential for us to return to Judeo-Christian values and principles, and I think that every young person should read the book of Proverbs.
You can never go wrong.
Well, Sean, I think, honestly, my advice to young people, don't let anybody tell you what you can't do. Have a goal, have a dream, and do everything that you can to achieve that dream, but it starts with the basis of an education.
Well said, Denise.
I think it's crucial for young people to empower themselves, and in that way they can be independent and not rely on anyone.
Think for yourselves. Don't let other people tell you what to think.
I like that a lot, David.
Do the math in life. Educate yourself. Learn as much as you can. Look at all sides to earlier points. But do the math. Come up with a plan for your life.
You're going to give us a lecture. I can hear. All right, go ahead.
Be the very best at whatever you do.
Angela.
Register to vote, and when you vote, know why you're voting for who you're voting for.
And all you're getting, get understanding. Don't be scared to fail. All you got to do is keep getting back up.
Whenever someone is telling you to pay attention to a minor issue like this, the color of your skin, question that. Understand that they're deflecting. They don't want you to think about the real issues, and that's what this entire discussion has been about, the real issues. Learn those.
The majority of our children are living in poverty, and that has been billed as the government's help. And so my question would be, you see your mom, you see her struggling. Is it enough? When they tell you, we want to help you, all you've got to do is look at where you live right now, look at what you get right now, and then ask yourself, and then ask your mother. I'm speaking as someone whose mom had a third-grade education. And so what you've got to do is you've got to say, is this enough?
Get an education and be wary of groupthink.
Chairman Previous was in Cleveland, Ohio last week asking black businesses, what do we need to do? But for those young people, I say to you, walk across the street, and ask a Republican, will you take a chance on me and mentor me to give you that opportunity?
You
and
ask
yes,
people,
we will.
They won't give it, but if you ask,
yes,
they might.
And we will.
They might. Yeah, good. Well, very well said. Yeah.
I'll say don't follow the herd, and also don't throw God away. Don't throw what we got.
Last one. Yeah, go ahead. Either or.
Oh, please let me have this. We are dying. We are killing ourselves. No one is doing this to us. We are doing this to ourselves. If we do not stop it, no Democrat is going to stop it, no Republican, no liberal, no conservative. We must stop killing ourselves.
Give yourselves a big hand. Thank you. You're right. That is all the time we have left for this special edition of Hannity. As always, thank you for being with us, and we'll see you back here soon.